Hello, my name is Jason Rice and I'll be filming this for Kelsey Townsend.
My name is Sally.
America.
I'm Joseph.
Julie.
And I'm Aaron.
I would like everyone in the audience to close your eyes and think of a tropical vacation. Many of you may think of going to Hawaii, relaxing, maybe scuba diving at the coral reefs. You may imagine the vibrant colors and the many different kinds of fish. With this expectation, how would you feel if you got there and that beauty was nowhere to be seen? You can open your eyes. Coral bleaching causes much of the coral and the beauty of coral reefs to be lost. This is an important issue because coral reefs provide homes and food for much sea life. Today I'm going to talk about coral bleaching. First, I'm going to explain what coral bleaching is and the main cause. Second, I'm going to talk about the effects coral bleaching has on the coral. And third, I'm going to describe the effects coral bleaching has on the sea life that require the coral reefs for survival. To begin, coral bleaching is a devastating phenomenon that affects not only the coral, but also the abundance of life that call a coral reef home. John P. Rafferty, a biology expert, explains coral bleaching as the whitening of coral that results from the loss of a coral's symbiotic algae. Many of the articles I have researched agree that the main cause of coral bleaching is increased temperature. As the temperature around the coral increases, both the coral and the algae are put under stress, causing the algae that gives the coral its pigment to be released. Tracy D. Ainsworth, a senior research fellow for Coral Reef Study, and her team say that bleaching results from extended warm periods. The frequency and intensity of such bleaching events are expected to increase as sea surface temperature, SST, continues to rise under climate change. In his article, Rafferty mentions this correlation to temperature as well. Mary Hagedorn, a U.S. marine biologist, and her team further explain coral bleaching. They say that when the coral holobiont begins to stress, it can lose its life-giving symbionts and bleach. This means that the algae that helps provide life to the coral leaves, leaving the coral empty. Hagedorn also says that there are many different things that can contribute to coral bleaching. Among these are temperature, water chemistry, solar irradiance, and bacterial infections. However, they also say that these mass bleaching events correlate with El Niño Southern Oscillation events, which produce elevated, sustained 10 to 12 weeks sea surface temperatures. This suggests that while there are other things that can help contribute to coral bleaching, the main cause is increased temperature. Next, I will discuss the effects coral bleaching has on the coral. Coral bleaching can cause coral reproduction to decline as well as coral death. Coral has developed a symbiotic relationship with algae. This means that they both rely on each other for support and survival. If the two are separated, the coral will bleach and will soon die. However, if the algae returns, the coral will likely survive. Even if it survives, however, the coral's future reproduction may be at risk. In their article, Hagedorn and her team inform us that bleaching profoundly affects reproduction in coral, often for more than one season. They go on to explain a study done in 1998 at Heron Island. This study found that coral bleaching does, in fact, cause long-term reproductive issues for coral. They also talk about another study done in Panama which found that all of the coral, not just the coral that were bleached, are affected by the bleaching events. So while some of the coral don't get bleached and some of the coral recovers from the bleaching event, all of the coral will still be affected and will likely have long-term reproductive issues. Next, I'm going to talk about the effects coral bleaching can have on the sea life that require the coral reef for survival. A loss of coral can cause a loss of habitat, which in turn can cause a decreased food source for a variety of marine species. Rafferty says that because coral colonies serve as the foundations of coral reef ecosystems, their decline may translate into a loss of habitat for numerous plant and animal species that depend on them. Rafferty also mentions his worry that the loss of habitat may result in the extinction of some species locally. Pratchett, a professorial research fellow for reef studies, and his team discussed this worry as well. They say that coral loss has the greatest and most immediate effect on fishes that depend on live corals for food or shelter. And many such fishes may face considerable risk of extinction with increasing frequency and severity of bleaching. So with the bleaching events, this can affect the fish that rely on the coral reefs for food and shelter. I was going to go into depth about a couple of the different places where coral bleaching events have occurred, but for the sake of time, I'll just explain it briefly. Keisha Bear, a graduate student at the University of Hawaii, talked about some of the events that happened in the Seychelles, in the Caribbean, and in Hawaii. I personally had the opportunity to visit the Caribbean a couple years ago, and while I was there, I heard of some of the loss to the reefs. At the beginning of this talk, I had you imagine going on a tropical vacation. We thought of the things we might do and the beautiful sights we might see. However, after learning about the effects coral bleaching can have on the coral reefs, we were reminded of the fragility of nature. First, we learned about what coral bleaching is and the main cause of coral bleaching. After that, we learned that coral bleaching can cause long-term reproductive issues for the coral. We then learned that a loss of coral can cause a loss of habitat and a loss of food supply for many marine species. After that, we heard about a couple of the different places where coral bleaching events have occurred. The ocean is filled with a variety of life, much of which thrives in coral reefs. We're able to experience this beauty when we visit tropical areas. However, with the increased global temperature, we may not be able to experience this beauty for much longer.